So my name is Farah Kodeih. I'm an associate professor of management and strategy at IESEG School of Management in Paris. What inspired me to pursue a career in academia was basically that I started reading classics when I was myself a student at a business school back in the days, and I did a research master. When I was there, I had the opportunity to do that, and I read a lot of classics that really inspired me, things about sociology of work, things related to power dynamics in an organization, and I was like, okay, maybe these are topics that I would like to pursue a little bit more, and then I got into a PhD. But then I discovered the whole concept of, the whole institutional perspective and the concept of institutional logics that back in the days really resonated with me. As a person that is binational, I am originally from Lebanon and I lived there for 17 years. Then I moved to France when I was 17, and I'm completely French. I consider myself as both. And it really resonated with me and spoke to me in the sense that I could feel how different social structures can influence your choices, your life, and shape your decision-making and even career choices and everything. And so for me, it was a concept that really spoke to me and resonated, and that I could feel how I inhabited different type of institutions. And I decided that this is one concept that I would like to mobilize when doing research. And one last thing I would like to say is like a turning point. When I visited actually University of Alberta when I was a PhD student, I had the opportunity to visit Alberta and meet with amazing scholars who were working on institutional theory and institutional complexity and logics, including Royston Greenwood and Maya Reynard. And I would say the exchanges and the quality of interactions that I had there completely also inspired me, and I felt that I wanted to continue working in these areas. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I have to say I was not attracted per se to the study of social entrepreneurship and technology. I've been doing very phenomenon-driven type of research for a few years now, and I started getting interested into the refugee crisis and its ramifications, and how organizations try to support refugees, asylum seekers, and other marginalized communities. And then some of these themes actually came up. You know how it is with the type of inductive research. I would also like to say that, of course, we think of social entrepreneurship and technology as type of solutions to some problems, but I'm actually quite critical. What I learned while doing that type of research and while collecting data with some of these marginalized communities is that we should always start with their needs, their lived experiences, how they perceive and see things, before trying to enforce some straightforward solutions on them. So I tend to think of social entrepreneurship and technology, or even technology entrepreneurship, as a form of solutionism that does not necessarily address these complex issues that could serve some members of these communities, but that are not necessarily a solution for the most disenfranchised. And so I'm always trying to understand things from these people's perspectives, to see what works for them. It could be that, but it could be something completely different. So that's how I came into these themes. So when I think of the different projects I'm involved with right now, I think they fall into two broad categories. When I talk to people, I tend to say that there's like a whole area where I'm interested in oppressive institutions, oppressive environments, and how they affect and shape organizations, and how organizations respond and cope in such environments. So, for example, the paper that I presented today at your seminar is a paper that talks about democratic backsliding in Hungary and how the civil society organization is trying to maintain resilience in the face of rising authoritarianism. Another project that falls under this category would be one where that I'm working on with my PhD student, who is trying to understand the localization of HIV/AIDS relief in Lesotho. And we're really what we're witnessing there is the power of the colonial structures and how they're preventing the localization. They're hindering the process of transfer of ownership from international organizations to local organizations. So it is a kind of like a different type of oppressive, dominating type of environment that's shaping how NGOs can operate in an environment. I'm also interested, for example, in EU border regime control and how it affects any type of solidarity that might emerge to help asylum seekers. So yeah, we've been trying to do this with my co-authors in multiple contexts and multiple domains. So the other category that I would like to emphasize is that I have a bunch of projects related to issues of marginalization within organizations, how organizations kind of perpetuate some, discrimination, marginalization, even inadvertently. But also how they can address that by creating policies and practices around inclusion and recognition of excluded social groups. And so, for example, I'm working on a paper with a few co-authors on a project that was in Austria, kind of like an art installation that was also supposed to be an escape game room. So they combined gaming with the art with raising awareness around the refugee crisis. So 3 different things, kind of interesting when you look at it, but then how it actually backfired and created the opposite effects of what was intended, because it ended up creating a lot of moral concerns, concerns about possible exploitation of certain people who were involved in this project, and issues of benevolent marginalization when you end up actually marginalizing the people you want to serve. Another paper I'm working on in this area is how one organization tried to support refugees using tech entrepreneurship, and how also that backfired because it wasn't what these communities needed, and so the organization had to kind of pivot, change its framing of its social purpose and what it was able to achieve, and even broaden the beneficiaries that it was intending to serve, because it just wasn't really doing a good job with the initial target group, which was asylum seekers and refugees. So yeah, a lot of my work is around different practices, policies that are implemented in different organizations, but also the unintended consequences that come with these different policies. But I try not to be just critical, but also explain how they kind of move on and do something that eventually works. So I think we have a moral responsibility as organizational scholars to think about how we can give back to the different communities. At least that's my understanding. We are, as organizational scholars, very good at understanding the different, institutional structures that create repression, that marginalize, exclude certain social groups. What are these barriers that these people face? But we need to take a step further by saying how our research informs practice and policy. And we, I think, are not still very good at that compared to economists who do this more systematically and consistently at informing policy. But I think there have been some emerging initiatives related to how organizational scholars can connect with the communities and give back. And there have been a lot of studies emerging on how we can even co-create research questions and research designs with these communities, something that does not serve us to write research papers, but also serves the different communities that we study. So that's one thing, but I think in a more practical way, I think we can write smaller pieces that are more accessible, that can be accessible to wider audiences, because sometimes what we write with the jargon that we use is not always accessible. So that's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do is using the business school as a platform to connect different people, and that's something I have tried to do when I was at Aalto University by creating a kind of a seminar that brings together researchers, NGOs, and representatives of different organizations, so that we can all discuss migration and displacement, but from different perspectives. And I'm trying to do this again now at my current school at IESEG, an event that is upcoming at the end of this month, where we're inviting people from different social spheres to come together and discuss how we can foster, for example, refugee inclusion within companies, within educational institutions, as entrepreneurs, but also how we organizational scholars can work with these people to make this happen. Last thing I want to say is that we can have a huge impact by informing our teaching. By introducing some of these topics in our teaching, because we are basically shaping the next generations when we go to the classroom and speak with all these students, we can shape the way they think about some of these issues. We've been very good at introducing and incorporating notions of environmental sustainability and circularity. A bit less when it comes to social issues of social sustainability and marginalized social groups, and I would like to see that happen more often and more systematically in our curricula in business schools. Yeah, I'm very interested in how different organizations come together to resist in oppressive institutional environments. It is something that I'm studying right now, as I said before, with civil society organization in Hungary, but I want that to become a bigger project and see this at a bigger scale and also in different fields, and not necessarily just the civil society field, because I think it's this kind of repression can be experienced in a bunch of fields, including, for example, educational institutions in some places. So that's something I'm very interested in. I am very interested in writing, for example, a methods paper about the do's and don'ts when you do research with marginalized and vulnerable social groups, because I think we have a lot of good methods that are very applicable in context and in Western contexts, when we do research with affluent individuals, but then do all these methods apply in a context where we're dealing with marginalized and vulnerable social groups? Well, I don't think so. And we've been seeing some actually pieces emerge in that area, and I would like to contribute in that area. One thing I'm also very interested in, and we've been witnessing that, is I would like to explore how field level actors can silence. Organizational silencing is something that I would be interested in at some point, can silence organizations, but also how it filters down to the individual, how organizations themselves can silence individuals, and these power dynamics can shape public discourse, and we've been witnessing a bit of silencing of or even a demonization of solidarity initiatives, whether with refugees or other oppressed and dispossessed social groups. And I would like to explore these dynamics a little bit more in the future. I want to say something very basic, which is don't lose faith when you get the first, the second, the third, the fourth rejection. Perseverance is key. But to be able to persevere, you need to work on something that is meaningful, that's what I noticed. Like, once I started working on something that I feel is impactful, meaningful, then actually the outcome of the process still mattered, but the process itself also mattered a lot to me. Writing those papers, exchanging with people, presenting my work, getting different insights, that mattered a lot because I felt that I was doing something meaningful. Well, the paper is definitely the one that just won the Responsible Research and Management Award. It's the paper on coping with indeterminate temporariness, sheltering work in refugee camp that I published with Henry Shield and Tom Lawrence on Organization Studies. This paper is very meaningful, and I think it deserves attention because it normalizes, I think, the conversation about the not only just the suffering of and the plight of refugees, which unfortunately we've been hearing a lot about, but also what kind of practices and processes might work in certain conditions. So I'm all about being critical of the oppressive structures and marginalizing conditions, but also like, what are the things that we might do in some contexts that can have an impact and that actually can improve people's lives. So just some specifics about this paper. The paper is conducted, the data collection was conducted in refugee camps in Lebanon with Syrian refugees who were fleeing war. So we looked at how one NGO created a small grants program where people could go through an entrepreneurial training and then get a grant to set up their own businesses. It's not an entrepreneurship paper, but it explains how through these small projects and ventures that these people were able to create within the confines of the refugee camp, they were able to think a little bit differently about the future. The future was completely foreclosed for them. It was completely uncertain. It was full of threats and uncertainty, and suddenly they were able to experience hope again and think of even their present moment as something that is filled with activity, with community, so there was a lot of like sense of belonging and community that appeared also in the data. So we want to just shed light on what sometimes can work in even the most difficult conditions that some groups might experience. But I have found a new level of productivity, motivation, and drive as soon as I started working on something that means a lot to me and that I feel could make a difference. So that is the advice that I want to give to people, follow your heart in terms of what you think is meaningful, because then the whole process can also become meaningful. But also don't lose sight of the existing scholarly conversations, because you want to create impact while you need a seat at the table and you need to contribute to the existing conversations. So it's this balancing act between following your heart but also contributing to an existing scholarly conversation.